Hello all. Today we'll be building a REST service using Jboss Application Server 7, MySQL and Eclipse. In order to do that, we will need Jboss Application Server 7 installed, MySQL installed, I'm using version 5, and Jboss configured to connect to MySQL, Eclipse configured to use Jboss Application Server, bit of a knowledge about REST services, HTTP, JAX-RS implementations and ORM. I'll be using RESTeasy, which is a JAX-RS implementation which is coming predefined with Jboss. Of course you can use Jersey, Apache CXF, any of those implementations. I prefer RESTeasy because it's a bit more mature JAX-RS implementation. So let's get started. I have already booted up my Eclipse environment. So what I will do first is create a new dynamic web project. Know that I'm not creating a web service project but a dynamic web project because I'm going to leverage some of the features of a dynamic web project. So let's first of all name our web project. So I'm going to name it books service. Let's name it book web service. Don't click finish here, click next, and click generate web XML and finish. Right, so we have the project created. Let's go to web content, webinf, and open up web XML. We need this file. What we will do is we will delete all these files here and only keep index.html. I'll go to web content, create a new HTML file. Let's call it index.html. What I will do is I will put a simple title here, book web service. I put a h1 tag here, book web service. We'll say REST service, book REST web service is running. Right, so what we will do is we'll go to our server which I already configured and see what is added. So we have a book service here. I will add that, click finish, and I'll start my Jboss server. So this is my console output. So you can see my book service is deployed. So let's open up a browser. Go to localhost port 8080 / book web service. So my web application is running. Still I don't have a REST service running, but my book REST service message is coming from my web application. Now let's give this a REST feature. So the first thing to do is in the web XML, make sure that I give my JAX-RS implementation here. As I'm using RESTeasy, there is a servlet mapping that needs to come here. I will put that here. So what I'm saying here is anybody coming to book service /REST should get my REST service. So URL mapping is REST asterisk, and I'm saying to implement JAX-RS RESTeasy implementation. right? So then we will go to our Java resources, go into source, create a new package called com.webservice. Inside com.webservice we'll create a new class. This is going to be our resource controller, so we will name it book service, because I'm going to be having a REST service which has a resource of books. Finish that. What I will do is I will give this a path / book service. So this path explains anybody coming to book service / rest, from there what is the service to move into, because you can have multiple services under a root directory. So I'm saying if somebody says book service, come to my book service controller. So I've given a path for book service. I will just create a status service first of all. What we will do is we will send out application type JSON, and the path for this is status. So I will have public response, which is a RESTeasy response get status. Return a response of OK with a message .build. So we'll give a simple message which says the service is running. Right, so what we will do is we will now go to our server, refresh, and then restart the service and see. So my book service has got deployed. I will go in here, type REST service book service slash status. Right, so my message is coming, which means my REST service is now running. So I have a status coming out. What we are going to do with this REST service is to manipulate a book service. That means I want to mimic a basic CRUD operation of a book service. So for that I will need to have data. I have already created a database. I have already created a database which is called books, and in that I have 4 columns, which is the name of the books, name of the book, name and ISBN number, price, and the published date. So if I put a description to my table, I get these columns. So name, ISBN, price, published date, and I already have some books. So I'll be trying to create a REST service which will mimic a basic CRUD operation where I can create a new book, edit a book, read the book's contents or the contents of this book's database, as well as delete one of these books. So the first thing that I will try to do is I will try to read the data within the books table. So I will use another get method, and it will also produce a media type application JSON, and the path for that it would be books. Let's keep it simple. Public response get books. Now I will need to connect to my MySQL database and get the list of books. For that I'll be using JPA with Hibernate. So what I will do is I will first of all go here and create a new package. com.qualifier new package com.qualifier and another package com.entity. So first of all I will create a new entity class which will mimic my database table called book. So I've already created this class. I will just copy and paste here. So in this class what I have is I have the book entity, and I have the columns which are matching the database, which are attributes in this class. So I have the name, ISBN number, price, and published date, and I have the columns matching for that, and simple getters and setters. Then in my qualifier, let's create the connectivity. So I will create a class called resource. I create another class called entity manager factory. So what I will do is I will create a resource and I will create an entity manager. So in my book service I will be using the entity manager, and through the entity manager factory I'll be getting an entity manager. Then in my resource I will create private static entity manager factory at producers public static create entity manager. I will need to give an entity persistence unit. Right, so I have this entity manager persistence dot create manager. So I get the entity manager from here. Entity manager factory. I will okay. Problem is get this entity manager factory. Right, so we now have our connectivity done. I will just need to create a persistence unit. So what I'll do is I will go here to src, create a new folder, called meta-inf. So inside this meta-inf I will create a new XML file called persistence. In this persistence file I am going to give, or the persistence XML, I am going to give a persistence unit to my MySQL database. I have already created that. So in this I have a persistence unit and it's linking to MySQL and it's binding com.entity.book, which is this class. I will need to take this name, go into my resource class and put it in here as my persistence unit. Right, now let's go to our book service and inject our entity manager then in my get books method I will create a string response, which is my JSON response. Create a query object to query my database. I will get from dot entity dot book. So I'm creating a query to get the books from my book entity. I will load the data or map the data that is coming from the database into my list of books. Close the connection and build the response. Right, one thing that we have to note here is that I'm getting a list of books which I'm converting to a list of com.entity.book type. These are Java objects. I am trying to return from my service JSON structures. So I will have to have a way of converting my Java object structure into a JSON structure. Now there are multiple ways of doing this, or multiple APIs which we can use. I prefer the JSON implementation that is coming from Google. So if you go to code.google./p google-json, you can get the latest JSON implementation. You can just download this and then unzip the file. You will get a list of jar files. So let's just, I've already done this, so let's go to cd so I have my Google JSON zip, and I have extracted the zip file to this particular directory. So let's go inside that. What we need is this jar. We need to get this json.xx version.jar, which is the latest version when you download. Right now the latest version that I have is 2.2.4. we need to copy this jar into our webinf webinf lib folder. So let's do that. So once we go here and do a little refresh magic, so we have the JSON jar. Now I can convert from Java to JSON. So I have created already a simple helper method which will take in a Java object and convert that to a JSON string. So I use a JSON builder, and in the JSON build I set the date format to ISO 8601 and UTC format, and then I create a JSON object, and whatever Java object that I'm getting, I'm converting it to JSON, json.toJSON. So let's go in here and pass into this the list of books. And get the response. So now this response string would be the list of JSON books. Right. What we will do now is we will send a response. Right, so let's go to my service server, redeploy, and see what happens. So my persistence unit has got deployed, my book service is also deployed. Let's go in here, let's go to book service, and let's make sure the service is running, status is okay, and get as per our controller books. So I get a list of books. Now these are the books that I have in my database. Can go into JSON lint, So we have a list of books, and if you go to my database, you will see the books that I'm getting in my JSON structure is similar to what I get in my database. First book is I Am That I Am, so I'm getting that book. Next one is Awaken the Giant, so I get that. So I am getting a list of books now. Now in a REST service, I can have two types of resources. One is a collection resource, other one is an instance resource. So now I am getting the collection of books. I want to go to a specific book. For example, I want to see information about I Am That I Am. So let's see how to create that. Before that, what we will do is we'll do some error capturing here. So if there's any issue, we will not have a problem, and the service will work without any problem. So what we will do is, if everything is okay, there are no exceptions thrown, I will send out the JSON response. If I have an exception, I will have to handle that error here. So what I'm doing is, if I catch an error, I will generate an error response which is much more developer friendly as well, and send it back to the client. And I'm sending the HTTP status not 200 as I'm saying here, if everything is okay, but status 401. So then all the intermediaries between the client and the server will also get to know there was an error in this response or in this request, and they will not cache the request and the response. So now this is done. Let's go and create a method to get the single instance of a book. So the top part is almost similar. I'm getting the same annotations. Only thing is, it will be a single book. So my method name would be public response get book. Now if I'm getting a single book, I would need to know what is the ID of the book, or what do I get from the book, or what resource should I get. Like, since we have a list of books, I would need to know what book that I'm going to return. So we can use a parameter which can uniquely identify any of these resources. I can use the ISBN number, I can use the name. So for easiness sake, we'll go with the name. So if I pass in the name here to my book service and give a name, let's say Alice in Wonderland, that's the book that I want to get. So this name has to come into our method as a in parameter. I create a path param annotation and give what is my parameter and what Java object it should map to. So what I'm saying here is, the path parameter name is going to map the content of itself to this book name variable. So I already have built this method. Let me put this here and explain the method. So what I'm doing is, this book name I'm going to find inside my entity manager or my database, and if I find that, I'm going to give it to existing book. So my existing book will be, if the book name that I'm passing is available within the database, the existing book would be the database entry or the table entry. So I'll be getting that resource. And if the resource is null, that means if I do not have this particular resource or this book, I will send an error response. Else I will convert to JSON using JSON conversion and send the details of the book out. If I catch an error while doing this, then I will give again an error response. Again I am saying the status is 401, and if everything is okay, status 200. So let's run this, publish, run. So my service is deployed. Let's go in here and say I am that I am. Right, so I get the information about my book. Name, I am that I am, ISBN number, price, publish date, etc. If I give a book name that is not there, I get status 401, message no content found, developer message book, and the book I am T not found in library. If I use Firebug or web debugger, and if I hit this, I get 401. So the HTTP status is coming properly. So if I copy this, I go in here, then I get a status 200. So my response type is JSON, and the response is this. I can see the JSON structure, and it can be cached. Right. So now we have the two methods or two services which will give me a list of books and a specific book. Now what we need to do is we need to create, if you are going to mimic a CRUD operation, to create a book, create a new book, to edit an existing book, and to delete a book. For that we would need form submission. So in order to do that, we will need to create a simple HTML which allows me to do form submission. So let's go here into web content, new HTML. Let's create book service client. Client. So I already have this created, so I will copy and paste this here. This is a very simple HTML which mimics a CRUD operation, and we will not go in depth into this HTML, but we'll go through some of the key methods. So first of all, let's see if we can republish this. Go in here and say book service client .html. right, so I have a I have a list method, a create method, an edit method, and a delete method. Right now I'm getting 4 not false because I don't have jQuery, so I will put jQuery because I'm using jQuery for my communication. And let's see how to get this working. The list would be of course what we have already deployed, so I'll need to just link the list method, which is a get method. The other methods will create one by one. First thing is to get the JSON library, jQuery library structure into my project. So I will go in here, cd / workspace clips. I should have the JSON library structure, sorry, the jQuery library structure in another project of mine. Okay, right, so my jQuery are in a folder called scripts. So I will create the same structure in my current project. And then copy all the JS files from my existing location to my current project. So I will go to my current project, go to web content, do some refresh magic. I have scripts folder, I have jQuery. Right now, if I go to book service client, I'm using Ajax from jQuery with jQuery. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm loading all the books. So it's a get method. It's sending a request saying I want application type JSON. I'm connecting to REST. I'm connecting to this service. So I'll copy that here, right? And I want a payload of JSON type and to not to cache it. So if I run this now, right, so everything is okay. I get the list of books as well. So if I click on list, right, I have the list of books. Now let's go to create. So here I want to create a new book. if I right now say my new book is, let's give a book that is not there, last place that God made, and I give an ISBN number, some number, and I give a price. My jQuery calendar is not working properly, but let's use this 7:30, and I say create. I get a 404. That is because I'm trying to post to my book service. Now in my controller I have several get methods, but I do not have a post method. That means I don't have a method here to accept any post request. So I will now need to create a method here to accept my post request, and this post request is used to create a new book. So I will say at post at producers media type application JSON as this is a post, my method will be receiving a set of data. It will be receiving this post information. So it's getting this information. I need to have something to consume that. So my method consumes media type application JSON. Now if I want to give multiple media types, that is also possible. Can just do this, say media type dot application XML. So now my media type is accepting JSON as well as XML. So preference would be first JSON then XML, but since I'm only working with XML JSON, so I will just say JSON. My application is consuming JSON, and it is having the path book, same as this. So I will create a new method, public response create new book, and into this I will be getting JSON data. Let's call this payload. Right, so I already have this method created. Let me copy and paste here and just explain about the method. So in this method I'm getting the payload, which is this set of JSON data, and I'm again creating a JSON builder, setting the default date format, getting a JSON object, but this time instead of converting from Java to JSON, I'm creating from JSON to Java. So what I'm saying is the payload that I'm getting of the type JSON should be converted to a Java object of the type book.class and give it to book. And I'm getting the entity manager, creating a transaction, persisting this book into the database, flushing and refreshing the entity manager. And if everything is okay, I'm sending a message back to the client saying, yes, your book is available here, and if I hit an exception, I'm saying okay, status 500, resource not created, and I'm giving the error message so that let's make it 500. I'm giving an error message so that the developer can identify what exactly went wrong. If everything is okay, I'm sending 201, which is created successfully, or resource created. So now let us again publish this, restart the service. So my service is running. Now go into my client and try to create this. Right, everything was successful. So I sent the post request with this data set. I got a response, localhost port 880, web service REST, book service book, last place that God made was created. So the last place that God made the new book that I wanted to create is in my database, and this is my JSON structure. So if I go to my database, I now have last place that God made and the new ISBN, the price, and the new book. Right, so now we have created 3 methods, one to get the list of books, the other one to get a specific book, and then to create a new book. So let's continue with the CRUD operations and edit the books, edit a specific book, as well as delete a book. So if I go to edit and I try to select here, my new book is not here. I'll refresh this. Okay, so I go to edit, my new book is here, I have the information. If I try to edit, I should get an error because that method is not there, method not allowed. So let's go and implement that. Now for creating a new book, I use the post method, but for updating or editing a resource, I'll be using the put method. I can use post suppose for editing as well as creation, but because I want it to be idempotent, I will go for the put method. So the top part is almost similar with the variation of a parameter coming, that is the book to be changed. So I already have this method, just copy and paste it here and explain. So in this I'm again saying okay, this is going to produce an application type JSON, it is going to consume application type JSON as well. The path is book/name, and the path parameter name gets mapped to book name, and the dataset that is coming gets mapped to payload. So if I go here, you can see this is the request that I'm sending, this is the payload, and the response is currently an error. So that payload is what is going to come here, and the path parameter is the name of the book. So again I'm doing the same JSON magic where I'm creating a JSON builder, and I'm giving the ISO 8601 date format with UTC, then converting the payload that I'm getting to a book class, because I'm getting a JSON structure converting to a Java object structure, and then I'm getting the entity manager, creating a transaction, and I'm finding the book that has been passed into my system or service, and if the book is available, I'm setting the new set of data that came with the payload, the ISBN number, the price, the published date, and then I'm merging the existing book, committing the transaction, closing the entity manager. If everything goes correctly as we are predicting here, then the book will be edited and I'll be sending back a resource link saying where the resource can be reached. New this should be new, not new book. Let's put the name of the book here to make it more meaningful. So it will say, if I'm sending last place that God made, it will say message, last place that God made was successfully updated. And if I hit a error, an exception, I will throw out a 304 and says resource not modified. And the important thing is to send the HTTP status, not just in the message body but in the status as well, status header, saying there was an error. Right, so let's go to my server, redeploy this. Right, so let's go to my simple client, edit, get my book. Let's change the price to $15 and say edit. So the book got edited properly. As you can see, I'm sending this JSON request and I'm getting this JSON structure saying the message is the last place that God made was successfully updated, and I'm getting the link to that as well. So if I want, I can just go to this link. Hopefully this should work. Yes, it's working. If I go to my database, the last place that God made, now the price is 15. The price is 15. So now we have the list, create and edit operations working. Let's go to delete operation. So I have all my books and I just want to delete Peter Pan. I am getting a 405 method not allowed simply because we do not have that method. So let's put that method here. I already have that method built. It is similar to the put method, the update or the create method, the only difference being the annotation delete. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting a book with the delete header, and if it is having a delete header, I'm going into this particular method and I'm finding that book. If the book is existing, remove that book. If the book is not existing, throw an error. Right, so let's go in here, synchronize, refresh. Reload. Right, delete. Okay, so I'm getting a response saying book successfully deleted. So if I try to go here, this last place that God made, okay, I'm getting book last place that God made not found in library. So that means it got deleted. So it's no longer there. Right, so we have just created a simple REST service which is mimicking a simple CRUD operation to create a book, to read the list of books or a specific book, and edit or update a book, and to delete a book. So I used Jboss's RESTeasy JAX-RS implementation, and if I quickly go through the client, the client is simply using AJAX calls. So on click of create, I'm sending a post message to my REST service with the data type application JSON, and I'm expecting a data type JSON. Then on click of edit, I'm doing the same thing. I'm sending a put operation with application type JSON to this URL with the book name parameter, which is, if you go to the put method, you can see this is the path parameter. So the book service client is sending the path parameter and saying, okay, I'm expecting JSON type data, and the delete is also the same. So it's the request header type delete, application type is JSON, and the book service is being called with the book name, expecting JSON type response, and that is what the delete method is sending back. If everything is okay, message book successfully deleted, and if there's an error, the error message. Right. So with that, we come to the end of today's session, where we covered a simple REST service which mimics a basic CRUD operation. Most people think that get, post, put, delete with REST services is mainly used for CRUD operations, but it is not so. But it looks more similar and much more easy if you do a CRUD operation. So you can use this for any type of REST services. And I used JAX-RS implementation RESTeasy, which is coming with Jboss, but you can use Jersey, or you can use CXF, RESTlet, any of those implementations which more or less goes on the same structure of creation, and the annotations, everything is almost similar. So I hope this helped you to understand how to implement a REST service with Jboss Application Server 7 and MySQL. There were certain prerequisites which I already mentioned, that is some knowledge about JPA, Hibernate, and about REST and HTTP, so I did not go that much into the implementations of those. If you need any more support in those areas, there will be some links posted below for you to go and check them out, where there are certain presentations or articles about how to use JPA, how to configure MySQL to work with Jboss Application Server 7, how to configure Jboss Application Server 7, and how to get the JPA working. Also, I will be publishing this code set to GitHub. The link is given below, so you can go to GitHub and get the full code as well, and you can play around with this. So hope to see you again in my next presentation.